Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack the very real dangers of misusing safety. Today, we're diving into a deeply nuanced piece by an author named Blue Dragon, and it tackles a massive issue in our current society. We're looking at how the heavy, clinical words we use to protect ourselves might actually be, unintentionally causing some pretty profound harm to people who simply exist a little differently than the norm.
You know, our culture has become incredibly fluent in the language of harm. We all know the buzzwords, right? But we've also become kind of careless about what those words actually mean in practice. There is a powerful quote from the source material that really hits the nail on the head. Unsafe is not a synonym for different. And yet, if you look around, that is exactly how these words are increasingly being thrown around in our day-to-day lives.
To really wrap our heads around this, consider the difference between a real risk and mere discomfort. Originally, words like unsafe, dangerous, and triggered were intended to describe true threats, situations that cause literal injury to the nervous system. But lately, we increasingly reach for these heavy words to describe something way smaller. Think about it. How often do people call a minor inconvenience traumatizing, or say a mildly awkward date triggered them? We're taking that simple, mild vertigo of encountering someone who just moves through the world a bit differently, and we're dressing it up in the dramatic, high-stakes language of actual danger.
And this slippage in our language creates a really dangerous pipeline. It starts quietly, almost invisibly. Someone thinks, I don't understand this person. But because of our cultural conditioning, that thought quickly jumps to step 2, I am in danger. By step 3, the person on the receiving end stops being just misunderstood. They are pathologized. They're actually coded as a safety risk. And here's where it gets truly damaging at step 4. Once someone is labeled a risk, their exclusion doesn't even need to be debated anymore. The safety language does all the heavy lifting. It magically makes pushing someone out sound responsible instead of what it really is, exclusionary.
Section 1. Difference is not danger.
For the author of our source, who identifies as autistic and plural, this isn't just a theoretical debate. This is their life. They point out that simply disclosing these facts, just casually telling someone they are autistic or being openly plural, which means existing as a system of multiple identities and using we pronouns, has literally been enough for others to immediately label them as unsafe. Think about that for a second. They were labeled dangerous not based on any aggressive action, not for anything they actually did, but simply for showing up authentically and existing as they naturally are.
So here is the absolute crucial distinction we need to make. Disclosure is information, not behavior. Telling someone I'm autistic or I am plural carries absolutely zero inherent risk to the person hearing it. None. If sharing a diagnosis leads someone to perceive a safety risk, that reaction isn't tracking anything the speaker actually did. It is 100% tracking the listener's own internal assumptions, their unfamiliarity, or maybe just the stereotypes they've absorbed over the years.
Let's look at how this actually plays out in real life. Many autistic people report this exact frustrating experience. Ordinary traits, like having a flat affect, using highly direct communication, making unusual eye contact, or stimming with repetitive self-soothing movements. None of these are actual threats to anyone, but they get misread as dangerous simply because they don't match a very narrow, arbitrary script for how a quote-unquote normal person is supposed to act. And honestly, who gets to decide what normal is anyway?
This happens to plural people too, and the source notes it can often be even worse for them. Decades of sensationalized, totally inaccurate media portrayals have completely warped public understanding. So the simple act of switching or communicating as different alters gets treated as something volatile or scary. But in reality, it's just a plural system functioning exactly as it functions every single day, doing completely ordinary things like buying groceries or going to work. It is absolutely not danger. It's just a different way of experiencing consciousness.
Section 2. The cost of discomfort. Let's look closely at how this escalates internally, because it happens fast. It starts at step 1, with a completely honest internal reaction. I felt uncomfortable. But instead of just sitting with that feeling, it morphs into step 2. I felt unsafe. And then the most dangerous leap of all happens at step 3. They are unsafe. Did you catch that? An internal, personal reaction quietly transforms into an external accusation. It becomes this heavy moral judgment against another human being. Ultimately, these false accusations land on real people, people who are often already carrying an immense weight of stigma and who have done absolutely nothing but exist.
They are essentially handed the bill for someone else's unexamined discomfort. And worse, that discomfort is dressed up as a noble concern for public safety. It's a profound injustice, frankly, just disguised as safeguarding.
Section 3. Interrupting the harmful pattern.
So, what do we do about it? If we want to prevent this injustice, we have to become way more self-aware. We need to quietly ask ourselves a few highly specific, grounding questions the very next time we feel that sudden urge to label someone as unsafe. It basically requires us to hit pause. Here are 3 questions you should keep in your back pocket. Number 1, what specific behavior are you referring to? And we mean an actual, describable action here, not a vibe, not an impression. Number 2, was there an actual risk of harm? Like something concrete you could point a camera at? And number 3, which is probably the most important, or are you instead describing something else entirely, like simply feeling uncomfortable, uncertain, or overwhelmed? By forcing ourselves to point to a concrete action, we can honestly separate a true threat from just feeling a bit overwhelmed by something unfamiliar.
And let's be clear, there is absolutely nothing wrong with feeling uncomfortable or overwhelmed. Those are totally normal, everyday human experiences. But naming them honestly, saying, "I feel uncomfortable," is vastly different from weaponizing the language of safeguarding to point a finger and declare, "You are dangerous." One takes ownership of a personal feeling, the other weaponizes that feeling to punish someone else for being different.
Section 4. Protecting precise language. The source material is very clear on this next point. No one is arguing that safety language should never be used or that people's experiences of danger don't matter. Real risk is real. People absolutely need the vocabulary to name it. But words like unsafe, dangerous, and triggered desperately need to keep their specificity. Because if they lose that specificity, they completely stop protecting genuine trauma survivors. Instead, they just become this bureaucratic tool that quietly and cleanly sorts who gets to stay in the room, who gets access, and who gets pushed out.
So let's make sure we're taking away the right message here. Being autistic is not a risk. Being plural is not a risk. Disclosing a diagnosis and being your authentic self are not inherent risks to anyone around you. Always remember, people should be judged by their concrete actions, not by the labels they use to explain their experiences, and certainly not by the natural, different ways they might communicate with the world.
Discomfort is incredibly real, for sure, but it is absolutely not the same thing as danger. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as you navigate your own reactions out in the real world. The next time you feel unsafe, take a breath and ask yourself, are you actually in danger, or are you just experiencing the unfamiliar? It's a small question, but honestly, it can make a world of difference. Thanks for exploring this with us.